All right, greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Blog Series. It is Sunday, June 8th, 2025, and on Sundays we look at the purpose and meaning of life. And since it's June 8th, I'm sure you've all got this marked down on your calendar, the special significance of this particular day, World Oceans Day. The first was actually celebrated in 1992, and since 2008, there's been an annual theme to celebrate the Earth's 5 oceans. Yes, we've added one since I grew up. So now we have the Pacific, the Atlantic, Indian, Arctic, and South Oceans. And what's the theme this year? Sustainable fishing means more. It's quite simple and direct, no hidden meanings there. The theme's intended to highlight the importance of sustainable fishing practices to ensure the health and the abundance of marine life and resources for ourselves and, of course, future generations. And this week, the Dr. J Vlog series will be focusing thematically on the oceans as well, doing a deep dive, no pun intended, into the many facets of the oceans. So we'll continue to use my sort of Rashomon-like approach to present 7 different perspectives on the oceans. On Sundays, today, of course, the purpose and meaning of life in relation to the oceans. On Mondays, mathematics and statistics. On Tuesdays, music and the arts in relation to the oceans. On Wednesdays, emotional health and well-being. Thursdays, knowledge and science. Fridays, human behavior and justifications. And on Saturdays, sports and humor. So how might I approach the oceans then in relation to the purpose and meaning of life? Well, for starters, we are descended from the oceans, from the waters. The scientific consensus, at least, is that human beings and all life forms on the earth emerged initially from within the ocean, possibly in relation to the hydrothermal vents that still exist. And so if that's true, then we might even suggest that all living organisms, from the smallest of microorganisms to mammals and people, ourselves, everything essentially could be related to a common ancestor that first emerged and lived in the oceans almost 4 billion years ago. But of course, in case you hadn't noticed, a lot's happened in the 4 billion years or nearly 4 billion years since then, and here we are. So in thinking about the purpose and meaning of life, the first thing I think about is the ultimate origin story of where and when and how life began. So we still don't have a full or definitive answer in that regard. And that's something, again, I'll deal with scientifically later in the week. But from a philosophical perspective, the first principle for me would be existence. Life exists in many different forms, and we as humans then are one such form. And the recipe for the ingredients of life, at least as we understand the concept here on Earth, always involve an energy source, organic compounds, and water. So sunlight clearly provides our ultimate energy source, and for the oceans at the surface, and then that drives photosynthesis, among other things. On the ocean floor, the geothermal energy supplies the chemical nutrients that organisms need to live. And of course, all organisms, we all need water, and regularly. In fact, at least as human beings, we can't survive more than perhaps 3 days without a fresh influx of water. And if we are indeed oceanic descendants, then I think it's important and critical that we think about the oceans in relation to the purpose and meaning of life. The surface of the Earth itself is estimated to be about 71% water. Okay? And of that, the vast majority, about 96.5% of that water's in the oceans. Again, I'll talk about the scientific importance of the oceans in terms of sustaining life on the planet and in relation to human beings and our many activities and so on later in the week. But let's just focus again on the purpose and meaning of life in relation to the oceans for today. I don't think it's an accident that many of us, most of us, all of us, have been awed by the sheer size of the oceans. I can't even imagine, traveling across the ocean and to every corner of the oceans. It that just defies imagination. And in fact, just sitting on the on the edge of the shore and just looking out on the ocean, for me, it's an almost a spiritual experience, if you will. Or I could just walk endlessly by the water and be gazing out and just taken away into another world, if you will. And it's a lot like that song by Counting Crows. I don't know if you know that one. You probably do. Maybe you do. It's called A Long December. So I'm not going to play the whole thing, but at the end of the song, he sings, and it's one more day up in the canyon, and it's one more night in Hollywood. It's been so long since I've seen the ocean. I think I should. Na 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 na, yeah. Anyway, you get the idea. So yeah, as I say, that line is right at the end of the song, and it's a lament, and it's again that sense of, yeah, really do need to get back to the ocean if you've been away for too long. And as a child, I had the good fortune then of being able to regularly swim in the Atlantic Ocean, or at least every summer. And plus, here's an oddity. I can't ever remember not knowing how to swim. So in other words, my earliest memories date back to about age 3, around my 3rd birthday. And I have a few memories from age 3. And yet I don't ever remember not swimming. So in fact, my greatest physical accomplishment, if you will, at least to date, is the fact that I was able to, just shortly after my 3rd birthday, and the pool had opened up, I was able to swim 10 lengths of the pool without stopping. Apparently people were pretty impressed by that. So I guess what I'm saying is I sort of peaked at age 3 relative to my peers, and I've experienced a long, slow decline in the 60 years since then. But seriously, I've always been a little fish, if you will, and always quite comfortable in the water. And I've never feared the water or feared the ocean. I respect the ocean tremendously, but I'll always dive right in, right? Even at least if it's anything close to a reasonable temperature. And in all honesty, in some ways, I feel almost more at home in the ocean than I do on the land. I don't know if that sounds strange, but I find it incredibly peaceful and calm in the ocean, on the water. Even when the wind and the waves pick up, I love being carried along by the water. And I'll often swim very far from shore, even beyond the buoys at times. You're not supposed to go beyond them, whatever. It's just the calmness of being out there in the water, no one else around. It's a unique experience. In fact, when we went to Hawaii this past January, the very first thing that I did on the very first morning that I woke up, this was before the sun had risen, I went down to the ocean and I jumped in the water. And I just swam in the ocean for several minutes. There were only maybe 2 or 3 other people in the whole beach, and I was literally the only person, at least in that area, who was in the water at that time. It's just such a life-affirming and serene experience. And so I want to make an obvious but important point. So just like the sun, we wouldn't be able to lead the lives that we do on our planet Earth without these oceans and without that water that covers more than 70% of the Earth's surface. And I don't ever take that for granted. Well, what about boats, Dr. J? Yeah, I love boats. I love, and other watercraft. Anything that allows us to travel and to fish and to play on the oceans and to do 1,000 other things. But if you told me I have only 2 choices for the rest of my life every time I came to an ocean, I could either visit the ocean, but only on top of a boat or a canoe or whatever, or I could only ever jump into the ocean. Well, for me, that'd be a no-brainer. I'd always want to jump in the water, be in the water, be immersed in the water, be tossed around by the water, then come back up for air. I'd always choose that rather than being on top of the water looking down on the water in a boat separated from the water. Yeah, nothing wrong with boats, but I'm just saying, if I could only choose one thing, I'd have to be in the water. Okay? And I think therein lies a deeper and a more profound insight into my understanding of the purpose and meaning of life. That is, we are born of the water. And as infants, and even as adults, we as humans are made up of water more than anything else, more than any other substance. And yet, as infants in particular, the percentage of our bodies that's comprised of water, coincidentally, is quite similar or close to the percentage of the earth that's comprised of water, at least the surface. And I know this is just an odd thought, but we sort of dry out a bit over time, and as we age. So that is to say that literally the percentage of our bodies comprised of water sort of evaporates as we get older. But naturally, what's happening is that our body composition changes so that we have less lean muscle tissue. And as our lean muscle tissue declines, so does the amount of water, because lean muscle tissue contains more water. And what's that replaced by? Fatty tissues. We all battle that. That increases, and those fatty tissues have less water. So literally, our H2O composition of our bodies changes as we age. But the point is that I actually do crave more water as I age, and I crave the return to water, to the streams and rivers and lakes and oceans and all of life's abundance and mysteries contained therein. And again, I just want to mention once more the sheer size and the countless unknown mysteries that do lie beneath the surface of our oceans. And so, for example, just in terms of life, it's estimated that there are more than 2 million different marine species alive in the oceans. That's an estimate, a guesstimate, if you will. And yet we've only been able to document maybe 250,000. Some would say maybe even less, relative to the numbers of possible species that are out there. And more than 2,000 species, new species, are being discovered in the oceans each year. More generally, more than 80% of the oceans are unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. And so we're not going to come close to exhausting our knowledge of marine life or the geography or topography of our oceans within our lifetimes. And if that's not reason enough to think more about the oceans and their importance, remember too that scientists estimate that more than 50% of our oxygen comes from the oceans as well, from all forms of marine and plant life and what's stored in the various different forms beneath the surface. So the bottom line is that we live on an Earth that's comprised of a vast, interconnected ecosystem, driven in large part by the oceans as a primary source of food and oxygen, and of course even climate regulation, as many of you know. So we owe our lives, we owe our very existence to not just the sun, but of course to the oceans as well. And so I'd like to give the final word, though, to the certified shark fanatic, science communicator, diver, and presenter, Liberty Denman.
For fear of sounding cliche, the ocean is everything to me. Not only is it the driver behind everything I do professionally, but it's also where I go for adventure and mental clarity. To me, World Ocean Day is about acknowledging how important the ocean actually is and how it can be used to tackle the very issues it's facing. The ocean's ability to regulate and restore extends beyond the benefits we feel individually, to helping tackle wider issues such as climate change, overfishing, and habitat degradation. Marine systems are complex, but it's key we make information accessible for decision makers and the general public to help guide our lives moving forwards. And today is the perfect day to do that.
Okay. So, and as you move forward in life, as ever, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, and dole out hugs in abundance. But final word, happy World Oceans Day.